Good afternoon. My name is Stacy Books, and I am the director of an organization called Persevere. And we are all extremely thrilled to be here today. With me is Kelsey Hall from Project Return and Dr. Patrick Osborne from Trevecca Nazarene University. And I'm going to start out by reading you a quote, and it's kind of a quote that I live by. And it says, "The most dangerous person in the world is a person without hope." Now, let me tell you why that's so important to me. Even though my name is Stacy Books, I was a TANF recipient 5 years ago. I was also a single mom who lived life in a very domestic violence relationship. I was also inmate number 438686. So what we do at Persevere is extremely personal for me because I touch the lives of the individuals that I am. During this collaboration, one of the things that we wanted to make sure was that we were not only touching the lives of individuals that are currently incarcerated, but those families of those that are currently incarcerated. We also wanted to touch the lives of those individuals that were at risk of incarceration, whether that was because of generational poverty or generational incarceration. I'm also a product of generational incarceration. So we came together in a 3-month period with over 30 partners and 57 individuals. Many of those individuals were me. They were people in our current program, people that are currently in our work release program, moms that became pregnant at the age of 16, and dads who had to walk away from their children for 12 years and came out of prison with no education, no job readiness. And so our goal is to teach a level of technology to provide them an opportunity so that not only can they remove themselves from dependency, but they can get to a position of self-sustaining, providing for those families and thriving. Because just like myself, I'm removed from that dependency to being self-sustaining, and now I'm at a thriving point where I'm giving back. That's where we want to see the individuals in our program go. Over the 90-day period, we asked Dr. Osborne to come in and do an evaluation of us and to do a gap analysis. And so I'm going to let him start off by talking about our mission, vision, and kind of those steps.
Yeah. Thanks, Stacy. I don't even have a dog in this hunt, and I'm nervous. The presentations to this point, the innovations that have taken place have just been unifying, knowing that we're all on the same team trying to solve these issues. So anyway, I want to speak to what I saw in the last 90 days as the external evaluator. So Stacy had mentioned Trevecca was hired to be the external evaluator and execute the gap analysis and needs assessment. So part of that was utilizing our IRB protocol and federal-wide assurance for protection of human subjects. We can come back to that in a minute, but that's really important for the data anonymity. Everyone kind of has talked about the things that have set themselves apart, and so I'll spare some of my other notes and really get down to where I think this collaborative sets themselves apart. So over the last 90 days, we had 121 actual meetings that I evaluated with 27 actively engaged partners. These aren't letters of partnership. These aren't saying, yeah, call me when you're ready. These are people that have skin in the game, that are currently working at this level, contributing already. So I thought the sheer scope and magnitude of the participation that comes out when Stacy calls and when an organization like Persevere calls, I was moved by that. It was, they were able to rally a great deal of support in a short amount of time. The other thing that was powerful here is I believe there's 41 counties represented in the area that they're trying to serve. As a product of their partnership, 37 of those counties have a physical presence to deliver what we're talking about today. Most of them have multiple locations through our partners. So again, these aren't letters of commitment. These are people that were putting in the work. Y'all, 120 meetings. These are hour-long Zoom meetings the last 90 days. We got other jobs. So let me tell you, we put in work, and so did our partners on this. Yeah, I think that's really the critical piece that I wanted to say there is the infrastructure that you guys were able to build across that region with that representation of people that are already doing this work. Okay, where are we at here? These values, all right. The one other piece here, this community piece, I'm not going to bore you with all these values. Some of them are, this was a collaborative. This was all people coming together to create these values. This wasn't something we figured out and just did ourselves. So that's why it's a little more robust than normal. This community piece, though, this was truly moving. The community aspect, and it's tough to really put a figure on this because you're sitting in these Zoom sessions, getting to know people from different backgrounds, different walks of life, and in a role of I'm just watching and evaluating and hearing all of the stories and hearing all of the things that they already do in this space to serve these the population that they're already doing. We all, and I think all of our partners can say, wow, this was a genuinely moving experience in the last 90 days. So I really wanted to take a special time to highlight that.
And I'm going to apologize. I think that's my diabetes meter going off. So if you hear the beeping, apologies in advance. The problem to be solved. Our problem is, we all know what our problem is. It's many low-income and justice-impacted individuals, those individuals at risk of being impacted by the justice system, those that don't have enough job training. We know that there's a high recidivism rate. We know there's a lack of access to supported services, especially for our outlying communities, and there's a lack of coordination of existed supported services. And one of the things that we talked about during our collaboration when it came to supported services is how do we ensure that we all connect with one another? So there's a case management system called Vantage Point that is used with the Tennessee Department of Corrections. And why that system is so important is because it allows a care group to come together and to create goals and actions and a form of communication so that no one is left off. There's that level of communication between us and Project Return to say, we referred someone over to you. They can enter those case notes in the system. Then there's another side to that, which is called Evolve. Evolve is an app that can be downloaded to the participant's cell phone. You can have instant communication and reminders of appointments. You can let someone know if you're within a specific direction from arriving. And so we wanted to make sure that those supported services and our collaborative partners, that we don't lose that connection so that no one is forgotten of or forgotten about. So Patrick just mentioned the 37 locations. We partnered with Catholic Charities for multiple reasons. And during that partnership, we decided that having a co-location space with them and us would allow us to reach those outlying areas. And the same with Project Return. We also have 2 correctional facilities that are going to be added to this project, which is the Deborah Johnson Rehabilitation Center, and we're already at Trousdale Turner Correctional Center. When we were trying to decide, you'll see the counties that are in red. When we were trying to decide where we should put our career success satellite centers and our main career center, we really took a look at those distressed counties, those at-risk counties. We even looked at where American Job Centers were received, and through that partnership, we can have co-location there. And then, of course, the Workforce Essential Centers. So not only will we be able to deliver technology training remotely across the state, but we can do it in those centers and have our service teams at every one of those locations. So 37 counties will be covered so that there's an individual there for them to go and receive services from. So the target population, TANF, WIC, SNAP recipients, justice-impacted individuals, those on probation and parole, youth between the ages of 10 and 18, opportunity youth, 16 to 24, and then, of course, special populations, those that are justice-involved youth, emancipated youth, aging out of foster care youth, those urban and rural communities, and at-risk and distressed communities. The solution. We took the Arizona matrix, put it out on a drive, and started dropping our current partners into that matrix and took a look at where we had gaps, and that's where we started pulling in partners. And one of the things before I talk about technology, one of the things I want to mention is we do certain things good and we do it really well, but what we know is we don't do everything well. And so this collaboration allowed us to reach out to those partners that do those other things well. And so we know together, as a collaborative, those individuals are going to get every resource that they need, whether it's through in-kind services or through the grant itself. So on technology, Persevere has been teaching full stack development since 2019. And one of the things that we came to realize is not everybody is a full stack developer. But there are so many job opportunities in technology that we expanded our career pathways to cover multiple technology careers. The other thing that we talked about too was the fact that not everybody's going to want to go into technology, and we don't want to turn anybody away. So we partnered with other organizations for an alternative career pathway. So whether or not they go to work in an apprenticeship program with Lee Company for plumbing or electrical, or they go to Project Return to go through their social enterprise for 90 days to get some additional training, we want to make sure that no one is left out. We want to include every individual and give them an opportunity. If that person goes to Project Return, they're still going to get the same supported services that Persevere provides. Mental health, family support services, they're going to receive technology, whether they're youth or an adult, and that holistic wraparound approach.
Yeah, so as Stacy mentioned, we wanted to make sure that this proposal fit everyone's needs. And so knowing that everyone may not go into the technology industry, we wanted to make sure that they were prepared for the workplace period. And so we wrote in this career readiness portion of it. So every participant who comes through will get to utilize this career readiness curriculum, and that will be happening across all levels. So whether someone has worked for 20 years, owned their own company, or maybe never had a legitimate job, this job readiness will affect all of them.
Can I add something? Okay. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. On the career readiness, one of the things that we were told by our stakeholders was, I was a professional once before. I don't need to start at the bottom. So we decided we were going to create multiple levels of career readiness so that we could put them in where they needed to be.
And I'll share quickly that we also, this is the collaboration piece of it. So we recognize, like Stacy said, there are things that we do well, but there are also all of those wraparound supports that we may not do in-house, and so we wanted to make sure that we had opportunities for housing, healthcare, childcare, you name it, and those are covered by our partners.
Okay. Youth services, one of the things that we've come to realize over the last couple of years is our youth have so much trauma. And so we reached out to OASIS because we wanted to include them in those support groups. So we're making sure that we have LGBTQ support groups. We're making sure that those youth also have a career pathway so that they can kind of step in, whether it's a technology path or not. And then the other thing that we wanted to make sure with the youth was that the education we were providing them was STEM-based. And so we're going to follow the STEM curriculum through the state. The other thing we wanted to make sure was the trauma-informed services, diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging, because we want to make sure that all of our curriculum has every bit of those components included in there, and that our staff is trained in those areas, and even as a leadership team, which is going to hold us all accountable, that they're ensuring that everything we do falls into that.
You guys know the DHS outcomes, so we're going to skip through those. And Stacey, if you want to hit the overall project goal, and then I can talk about outcomes.
Sure.
quickly.
So our project goal is basically to increase economic status and stability. We want to take an individual, like I said, from dependency to self-sustaining to thriving. And we're going to do that as a collaborative with that network of individuals. Oh, gosh.
It happens quickly. Let's put these up here. All right. Questions?
Can you start by telling us what from your perspective is different about or innovative about this approach beyond other things that are happening in the human condition field?
You know, technology is one of the fastest growing industries. And what's unique about it, especially for an individual with a background, is a lot of companies don't care as much about that person's background as they do their knowledge and their training. We partnered with Indeed.com. I currently have 13 individuals working for Indeed making $35 an hour that were previously released from prison. Then we partnered with Epic Games, and I don't know how many of you have children, but they're the creator of Fortnite. They are going to work with us on building curriculum for game development because we know children, their minds are on games, so why not direct them into a possible pathway? But I think what also makes it unique is we have the experience, number one, as a collaboration, to really understand the population that we serve. But I've also watched individuals come through our program that were in prison. They came through our work release making $10 an hour. Then they were bumped to $15 an hour during an OJT training program, released from prison, and now I joke because some of them are making 6 digits a year. I'm not. Some of them are driving BMWs. I drive a GMC. Some of them are living in flats in Memphis or downtown Nashville. I live in the country. And so we've seen that progression of success, and we even decided as a collaboration that we want to make sure to call them future professionals. We want to address them in that way because if we can change their thought process of themselves and they can see themselves as a future professional, then that's what they'll be.
And if I can just add one thing to that, I think a lot of organizations that work with justice-impacted individuals may have conviction restrictions, and through this collaborative and working Project Return and Persevere side by side, every single person, no matter the conviction, will have an opportunity. So just wanted to acknowledge that as well. No matter the conviction. So we, correct.
For us, we have some limitations because of technology, but other partners do not have those limitations. So those individuals that would normally come to us that we would have to turn away because of a specific conviction, with that partnership, we're still going to work with them and give them those support services, but we're going to allow them to move into a different pathway.
You probably already covered this, and I'm slow, but is any of this training going on in the prisons? Okay, so in and after.
Right. So right now we currently have 4 prisons in the state of Tennessee, MLTC in Memphis, West Tennessee Men and Women's in Henning, and at Trousdale. And then I have 176 individuals, adults, that we're serving in 10 counties across the state. And then, of course, we're teaching their children, and we have an average of 3 to 4 children per parent.
I'm going to talk money again, so I'll allow you all go to your pie charts and to the budget aspect. And I do notice if you go on to a couple more slides after that, you may, Vice Chair Askew's comments about there is some funding that is going on. I see a state of Tennessee appropriation to either Project Return or Persevere.
To Persevere.
To Persevere, that $1.6 million that's in there too. And if you could back up to those pie charts and tell us a little bit about the funding plan, how you see the investments being made in individuals, if you could.
So every individual that comes through our program is going to receive a laptop because we feel like that's the tool for their success. So some of the funding, the breakdown that you see where it's professional services, that's going to be our partners. So like Project Return, for instance, is going to provide transportation. They're going to assist us with any type of documentation that individuals need. And then on the salary side, that is the staff for Persevere, where it is your mental health counselor, your youth mental health counselor. It is your family support specialist. It's building those pathways because we're going from just being on the full stack developer to increasing those additional pathways. And so year one shows a little heavy there, but we're looking at serving 1,200 unduplicated adults over the 3-year period. And then we took into consideration, because of us serving anywhere from 3 to 4 youth right now, that we're looking at about 2,400 youth that are going to be in this program. So we're looking at 3,600 individuals being touched.
I had a great question to ask, and I just forgot what it was. Pass it off.
Stacy, this is off topic just a bit about this collaborative, but I would like you to share just a little bit of your own story. You clearly are a project of these kinds of supports. Can you talk a little bit about Stacy's journey?
So and I'm going to go back a little bit, so I'm going to apologize, but when I was 17 years old, I watched my brother take his last breath. He died of cancer. About 6 months later, my father committed suicide. At 19, I was pregnant with my daughter. Single mom, no family. My mom died when I was 5 months pregnant. Then I moved into a relationship with my daughter's father, which was extremely abusive. So there was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of things that happened where I should have gone to mental health counseling, but in my family, that showed weakness. So fast forward. Divorced, was losing my home. My ex-husband gave my car back to the finance company. I had a daughter in the 4th grade, so I was looking at being homeless and not even having a car to live in. But my pride really stepped in the way. And so what did I do? I called a felony theft charge. From that felony theft charge, I thought my life was going in the right direction. I have been in the workforce development field for 17 years. I owned my own recruiting company. I've placed individuals at C-level positions, even with Gibson Guitar, across the entire world. But I was never going to be successful until my mental health was under control. So I violated my probation. Had 5 years probation. I will say I'm probably the first individual in American history to marry a detective while on probation, but I did. So I thought that, hey, my life is together, right? I'm on probation, I'm married to a detective, we're going down the right path. Not so much. Still, that trauma really surrounded me, and I ended up finding myself violating my probation. I had 1 year left. And I attempted suicide twice. I became addicted to Xanax for about 90 days. And I spent 9 days in a mental hospital. And one of the things that I learned in that 9 days is I am not alone. It did not matter my level of education. It did not matter where I had been in a career. Until my mental health got under control, I was never going to be successful. That's why that quote's so important to me. I was at a place in life where I had no hope, and I was at the most dangerous place. 1 year, I fought for my violation of probation. And I thought I had a leverage because my cousin was a congressman from the state of Louisiana, so I was like, hey, can I borrow the money to pay my restitution off and maybe leverage only getting a year left of probation? Didn't happen. He wanted to give me another 6 years probation. But at that point, I had gone through weekly therapy and started to address the fact that I had self-sabotage. And that was a lot of the reason why my success was not as great. And I realized that I had a lot of trauma that was unresolved. And so I stood before the judge and asked him to put my sentence into effect. At that point, I served 3 years in the Tennessee Department of Corrections. It was the best 3 years of my life. While I was there, I watched the women around me with codependency and trauma and lack of education and not, there was no self-worth, no value. And when at that point, I was like, you know what? My God-given gift is to give back to these men and women. And so that's what I decided to do. Well, I was one of the lucky ones, and I got to work at central office for TDOC for Commissioner Parker. And there was actually something that he saw in me that I didn't even see in myself at that point. So I went up for parole. Worst thing in the world somebody can ever do is tell you to find a job before you leave prison. Almost impossible. So I typed up my resume. I called it a 1986 computer, because that's about what it was, in the library. And I passed out my resume from the top floor, which held legislation at that point, all the way down to the bottom floor. I gave out 86 resumes and advocated for myself to find employment before I left there. So the founder of our organization came in, and I said, hey, I overheard you were a felon. So am I. I need a job. Here's my experience. This is what I want to do. And so Commissioner Parker at that point, because Sean was a vendor for the Department of Corrections and I was going out on parole, he had to get approval to hire me. So I was hired by Vantage, which is a software development company. While on parole, I got to travel with all of their assistant commissioners and Commissioner Parker selling Vantage and just hanging out at ACA meetings and APPA meetings. And then the next thing I know, we're in the process of putting Persevere together. And one of the things that, the only thing that Tony said that day was, you can put this in my prison if she runs your program. And I've been running it ever since then. We have a 3% recidivism. Now, when we wrote this grant, you're going to see 0. But that's because yesterday I spent all day with TDOC and went through our data and found out we had 1 person in the last 3 years that absconded. So our recidivism rate, the fact that those guys are making 6 digits, some of them are working for Indeed, they have their children back. We've got several that are now in the process of even remarrying their children's mother. So they're paying their child support. They're giving back to society just like society was able to give back to them. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I remembered my question. If we still have a few seconds, we still have a few more minutes. Back to the beginning of our presentation today from Commissioner Carter, we were reminded that we had 80 different presentations come before us. I recall that there were 3 presentations from Persevere. We had one in East, Middle, and West. And as we're trying to get a broad cross-section of organizations to participate, tell me about the structure of the organization of Persevere itself, the locations, and as we look at scalability of what we're doing, could you please talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one of the best things that happened with COVID, if there is one, is we learned to do everything virtually. So even though we have an office in Memphis, which is a hub where a lot of the participants in that area come into our office for job training, technology training, or case management, we realized that we can do that same thing virtually. So when we applied for all 3 regions, we knew that we could scale based on the current model that we already had in Memphis. We also knew with our relationship with the Tennessee Department of Corrections and the community supervision side of the house, serving those individuals that were at risk or already justice impacted would be easy for us because of that support. So when we applied for these, we really wanted to make sure that we positioned those offices in areas where everyone could reach them with the mindset that we may have to reach all of those individuals virtually. So what we did is we partnered with the public broadcasting system. So if individuals do not have internet access, we can utilize the public broadcasting system so that they can hit the towers and still receive all of our education right there in their home. So I feel like what we've done up to this point and with our partners, that scaling this across the entire state is going to be easy. And I'm also going to say that I feel that way because we applied for an ARPA grant as well. That ARPA grant, so the American Good Jobs Grant, the grant that we applied for with that covered the entire state of Tennessee. So that model we built for that grant can be expanded through the whole state. I hope that answered.